I think that what you were seeing in the game as a whole at the moment is far too much technicality. So people expect the referee to be perfect and every decision to be perfect. You can't have it in a game of rugby. So let's take the scrum, for example. So when I was refereeing the scrum, I didn't care if there was a slight angle by the tight head or the loose head. If there's a slight angle, it's not a problem. If there's a big angle and they're driving across, then there's an issue. So if there's a slight angle, I wouldn't be chasing after a slight angle. I'd be chasing after the clear and obvious ones. So my sort of setup, the first key thing is the height, because if you don't get the height right, then you have the hinging and the hitting down, and then you have a scrum collapse. So you get the height right. You then need the stability, because you have to have stability in the scrum, or otherwise it's just going to be moving, and then one side will just push somebody back, and then you haven't got the stability and the ball can't come in. Now, what I'm seeing now in some games is a referee free kicking where there's a couple of millimeters of instability. Just wait. I always just sort of wait a second, because if there's a little movement, when you got all this weight coming together on the set, there's no way they're going to hit and be perfectly stationary. There's going to be a slight little movement as they hit, because if one side hits slightly more than the other, then there's going to be little movement. So you just wait a second, let it settle. So don't panic with, okay, it's not perfectly, but it will stop now. That's fine. So you want the stationary before the ball comes in. And then after that, then it was angles then, and binding. So if you used to sort of, if the loose head sort of was shoulder was tucked in, then he was always going to step out and drive across. The tight head, then if he was at an angle, he was always going to try and attack the opposition hooker. And then if the hooker would stand up, there's a good chance that the tight head going across on him, and that's not legal. And then the bind was crucial as well. You know, if you had the loose head whose elbow is pointing straight to the ground, and I'm watching some games now, and they penalise the tight head, and you can clearly see the loose head's elbow pointing to the ground, and the jersey of the tight head is being pulled off his body. Well, there's your answer. Nice and easy, simple. He's pulling him down. And then obviously you look at the tight head then to make sure that he's driving straight, then he's not short on his bind. So his bind is long, he's not on the arm, and sort of not then pushing up and then bang, cranking the loose head down. So you get those main sort of 5 things right. The rest of this, don't worry about if there's a slight angle by the two players. That's not a problem, because it's impossible to be perfect.
That's a brilliant exposition. That's a brilliant exposition.
Get those 5. I remember going in to do. I was doing England, France out in Paris, and I met with the players. We met the coaches on the day before the game on the Fridays. I met with the French coach, and I met with the English coach and the captain Owen Farrell, and then. So they were just asking in general about a few things. You know, we feel we feel France is sort of pushing the offside line quite a bit. Could you say, well, okay, yeah, I watched the last game, you got a fair point, so I'll address that. So what I used to do then, I wouldn't let France do it and then say, I got you. I would tell France, look, you need to make sure today that you're behind the offside line. And then a good coach and good players would react to that, and they would do that. So it solved England's problem. It solved a problem for me. And then France would tell me, Nigel, we think that England in the line-out, he told you he was very good at this. We think that in the line-out, when they come down, they tend to work themselves around on the opposite side and get their hands in to try and disrupt our ball. And they're coming round before the line-out is over, so they're offside. I said, yes, if they do that, they're offside. So I'd address then with England, look, when the line-out is and maul is forming, and I don't want you to come around until the line-out is over. You can reach round as long as you're onside, but I don't want you working round illegally. You're going to be offside. Fine, and then they'd address that, and it wouldn't happen. So then the change room before the game, and I remember Elish Gens telling me that he felt that the tight head from France, Nigel is going in on the hooker all the time. So my only option is to come out and go after him, or he's going to kill us. And I said, look, Ellis, I said, you have to trust me to deal with the tight head going in. If I feel the tight head is going in, you got to stay straight. But I said, yeah, but then he's going to kill me. I'm going to be open. Yes, I appreciate that. But trust me, that if I see the tight head going in, I will deal with him. Because if the tight head is going in slightly, but he's not doing anything sort of, too illegal, he just a slight angle, and then you decide to come out and go after him, what I may be seeing is you coming out. So you need to stay straight, I'll deal with that. And I would tell the French players exactly the same. That tended to work. They'd listen then, they trust you. Okay, if he does go across, he's going to deal with it. And then if I didn't deal with it, then they'd be going, all right, he's not dealing with it, we've got to deal with it, and then you have a problem in the scrum. So that pre-match discussion with the captains and with the coaches on the Friday before the game, and particularly the front rows and the changes before the game, that was key to me. That was hugely important. And what I made sure I did, if I told them, look, you don't try and hit early, because if you do, I'm going to free kick you. If they hit early in the first scrum, I'd free kick them, because I told them in the chair, and they know, right, okay, he's going to do what he said, let's not do it. And they would adjust to that. So a lot of it is coming down to your man management of the players and preparing as well. Not going into the preconceived ideas, but getting the players then to trust you that you will deal with it. And so
what's fascinating about it is that what is going on is they definitely trying to put preconceived ideas in your head.
Oh, of course they do. Of course they do.
And look, I mean, that may be fascinating in some ways, but I actually wonder whether the dialogue is counterproductive in many ways, because wouldn't it be better for them just to, as far as they understand the laws, to abide by the laws? And you go in, everybody goes in with a clean slate.
I think, and this is where I think, if you over prepare, some referees will watch games and games and games and make notes on individual players. Then you're going to get caught out. Then you're going to have preconceived ideas, and you're going to go in and let's say, for example, I don't know, let's say you were reffing Australia, New Zealand, and then you were focusing on what Richie McCaw does in the contact area. So if I went into that game just looking at, like, McCaw does this, I'm going to make sure he doesn't do this, I'm going to watch this. I can guarantee you the flanker from Australia does exactly the same thing, but now you're not picking him up. So you're not refereeing the game fairly. So my preparation was very, very minimal compared to a lot of referees. All I would do would just look at a couple of things I couldn't control. So some of the things I couldn't control was the opposite side of the scrum. So if I was refereeing France-England, I would look at France's game last week and England's game last week, and I would just look at the scrums, just to see if there's a pattern there. And the other one then is the line at the maul, because it's so much going on there. It's very difficult, somebody joining the other side. If you're in field, you're relying on the assistant referee. So the things that I couldn't sort of control or see myself, I'd have a look at them, just make a couple of notes, and then I'd go in with an open mind. So it wasn't a case of, this is, England do this, so I'm going to deal with this. No, it was there if I needed it. And that to me is crucial in getting that balance right. I always found those meetings fascinating, but I also knew what it was all about. I knew that they're going to try, and I said, look, yeah, I would say that, yeah, Eddie, I see where you're coming from, but I thought last week, France were very good at staying on their feet. For me, I didn't have any problem with them off their feet last week, and if they do the same this week, then I'm going to be happy with that. So it wasn't a case of, I'm going to be watching this, yes, I'll do that. No. I always sort of had an open mind about it, and that probably comes down with experience I get. But sometimes, yeah, with a less experienced referee, or a referee that that you can get into his head, then you are going to do that. Of course you are, because you're a coach, you're a player. You're going to push those boundaries.
Although rugby does that so much more, doesn't it, Nigel? I mean, I know you get gaming and professionalism in football and cricket, but rugby, because it's so many laws, and these guys spend almost all their time trying to circumvent them in training. There's no sport like it in the world, which must make refereeing almost impossible, because that's what they're doing a lot of the time. How can we cheat this law?
Yeah, and you're right. And we saw it on the weekend as a great example here for you. So I had a bit of a lively discussion with Martin Johnson, as I love doing, after the game. So if you looked, so the goal line dropout was brought in to try and prevent the continuous pick and goes on the try line, when nobody spreads the ball wide. They're just going to barge themselves over. One, it's it's not attractive unless it's your team who are going to score. And as well, it brings it more collisions, which we're trying to sort of reduce in the game to try and get players to actually try and beat men instead of running through them to try and, from a safety point of view as well. So they bought this goal line drop on in. So 2 things. It hasn't done that. I'm not watching games and going, the pick and goes are less. I don't think they are. If they are, they're very, very, very limitedly less. So I'm not seeing, they're still trying to barge themselves over. So that law hasn't done what they were hoping it would do. What it's also done is brought a sense of negativity. So if you looked at the game, the Wales-Italy game, Wales's first try, I think it was, where Elliot D was short of the line, he was actually then picked up illegally by the Italian and dragged over the goal line. What that Italian player was trying to do was drag him over the goal line on top of him. The ball is held up. We will now have a drop of 22. So in a law that was brought in to try and open the game up, 1, it hasn't done that. And 2, players' defense now are looking now and found a loophole. Let's try and drag them over and keep them up so we get the goal and drop of 22. You'd never do that before. You'd tackle to drive them back. So you're right. And this is why they have to be very careful when you look at law changes, because when you look at the law change, you have to think about what effect it will have by the end of the season. A classic example was, I remember I was in a room in a discussion where some of the hierarchy in the game say, look, there's too many penalties in the game. We're seeing games being kicked and won by penalties. We've got to reduce the penalty to 2 points or 1 point. Oh, yes, that's a great idea. There'll be less penalties. And I said, okay, hang on. So if you're going to kick a penalty and get 1 or 2 points, or you can score a try by scoring 5 points and 2 points, which make it 7 points, what do you think the defense are going to do? They will be a lot more negative in killing the ball because they'll rather give 1 or 2 points away than give 7 points away. Oh yeah, we didn't think of that. So all of a sudden, so you've got to think about. You've got to think about sometimes when you bring in law changes. Now, the 50-22, I think is pretty positive. I don't think we've seen any excess kicking because of it. But what we are seeing now is good, accurate kicking. I don't think it's opened up the game as much as we're hoping it was. That's a lot to do with the contact area because we're not keeping players on their feet. So you look at some instances in the games of the weekend, there's a tackle, you have 3 or 4 attacking players going in to protect the ball, and you'll have 1 defender in there. Common sense will tell you now you've got 14 defenders lined up against 12 numbers attacking. There's not going to be any space. So if you want more space, you need to referee the law, keep players on the feet in the ruck, so you're actually having a contest, which means they're going to absorb more players in there. So it opens up the defense a bit. So the 50-22 hasn't really done that, but it hasn't brought any negative effect to the game. So that law changes. It's a pretty decent and a fair change because it has brought a little bit of excitement and a little bit more skill in actually, you know, it's picking to get that 50-22. So that's why it's important, I think, sometimes, and all of us probably, when we're all calling for a law change, sometimes you have to think. You know, there are, I think, I don't want to go on too long here, but there are some law changes, I think, which, for me, the caterpillar ruck is an issue in the game, the box kicking. There are 3 things here that you can do, which I don't think will have a negative effect. First of all, it's already in law. So if you look at the games now, what the law tells you is the referee should call use it when the ball is available. It shouldn't call use it when it's already on the way back to the caterpillar ruck. So once it's available, the referee says use it. So referees need to quicken up. Some referees are taking 2, 3, 4 seconds too long before calling use it. So the referee calls his use it. Once it's available, you now have 5 seconds. That's going to quicken things up a bit. Or you change that law and bring it down to 3 seconds, which will quicken it up even again. Or you could look at, and you probably need to trial this, because I'm not sure if there'll be any adverse effect to it. Or you could look at saying, once that ball is available and the referee says use it, the ball has to go. So the referee then, once it's available, says, use it, the ball is gone. So there are 3 law changes there, which you can quite simply look at to bring a positive effect to the game, which probably won't bring any negative effects. And that is something that I think they really need to look at, because the caterpillar ruck now is just becoming a bit of a joke, and it's just more endless kicking in the game because of it.